Hello everyone, this is Erik, the Asian movie enthusiast, and this is my review of Arahan, a Korean action comedy from 2004 that was directed by Ryoo Seung-wan, a man who has given us a number of entertaining movies. Now, it has been a long time since I watched this movie. I saw it one time way back in like the mid-2000s, and I remember liking it, but not loving it. So let's take a look. An opening scene shows 6 Taoist masters talking and complaining about transitioning their training techniques to modern day, and how modern young people are less knowledgeable of these arts and how difficult it is to find and recruit students. Then we meet one of those students, a young woman played by Yoon So-yi, who works at a convenience store. She ends up chasing down a criminal, but inadvertently injures a street cop, played by Ryoo Seung-bum, with a good sense of justice this guy has. So she brings him back to the Taoist masters for treatment of his injuries, but to their surprise, they realize that this cop has strong spiritual energy, so they agree to train him. And meanwhile, while this training is going on, a strong villain from the past awakens and clashes with the masters. Now, there are elements to Arahan that we've seen before in other movies. There's a handful of them that come to mind. The plot in and of itself is nothing special. You know, the characters in this film actually reference a few other movies directly through dialogue, like one particular tokusatsu property and even the Lucky Stars Hong Kong franchise, I believe. One scene also kind of reminded me of Shaolin Soccer and how it's executed. And I think that's one of the things that kind of distracted me and limited my enjoyment of Arahan the first time around. We've seen a lot of this stuff before. But during this second viewing, I came into the film knowing that. And usually, when I'm watching a movie like this, I focus on the execution more than the story creativity. So the fight scenes are actually pretty good in this. You know, there's not a lot of action, but the second half of the film has enough of it to satisfy. We get a good fight in a restaurant near the midpoint, which kind of incorporates some traditional martial arts. Then we get a fight that infuses some telekinesis and other kind of superpowers that are mixed in with some sword fighting. The finale is actually pretty lengthy and satisfying, beginning with a sword fight, and then it mixes in some fist fighting and other souped-up abilities. So there's enough variety here, and the action is filmed well enough to be enjoyable. The script does a good job at kind of blending the different genres together, especially like action, comedy, and drama, I would say. There are some funny moments here, okay, that I liked, but it also avoids getting too goofy or relying too much on comedy. It has a little bit of a serious streak at points to help balance things out, like as I like to say. Like near the beginning, our main cop character gets beaten up pretty good by some thugs, you know what I mean? And it kind of grounds the film a little bit, you know. There's enough, I would say like the main protagonist is also developed enough, and the actors definitely help to retain your interest. We got a good cast here. We got Ryoo Seung-bum, who's been in a bunch of stuff, including some of this director's other movies, like The Berlin File and The Unjust. He was also in Crying Fist, so if you're a fan of that film, you'll recognize him. And then we have Yoon So-yi, who is probably most well known to international audiences for her role in Shadowless Sword, which is a good flick. And I think Arahan makes a nice double feature if you're a fan of hers. I would have liked to have seen her continue with some action films after these, but that does not seem to be the case. She's only been in 6 theatrical films in her entire career. But thankfully, she's been very busy doing TV work and seems to have a good fan base there. Then we have Onsong, who has a significant role, and he's one of the big-time legends of Korean cinema. You know, I think the movie that solidified my fandom for him was Musa the Warrior. I thought he was pretty awesome in that film, but I mean, he's been in films going back decades, and he's been in a lot of good stuff, so he's always a plus in a movie. And then we have Jung Do-hong, who rounds out this cast. Now, this guy was in some very fun action films during the 2000s, and you'll recognize his face if you've watched Korean action films from the 2000s. But he's only starred in one theatrical film over the last 15 years. Now, on the positive side, he's done a ton of stunt work and action choreography kind of behind the scenes over the years, all the way up to the present day. So it's nice to see that he's been busy. But I like watching this guy on screen, like kicking ass, you know? but he hasn't really done that much recently. So I think he was in one movie a few years ago that I have not yet seen that I hope to check out. But hopefully he gets back to that a little bit more. So yeah, the cast in this is actually really quite strong. So I think, if you're going to describe this movie in a nutshell, there's some good stuff in Arahan. Makes it entertaining. I would say moderately entertaining. But I think like the familiarity of the, like the story and those elements, and the fact that it does not really like excel in any one particular aspect to a significant degree, kind of holds it back from being like a classic. You know what I mean? In my opinion. Some people really liked it. I think some people found it mediocre. I'm kind of in the middle. So I do think it's worth watching, especially if you're exploring this director's filmography. It's certainly worth watching. And it is currently available on Netflix in the United States. So if you have a subscription, hey, check it out. And as always, we will see you next time.